So, you see it right here on the screen. All right, so everybody seated? Yes? Everybody's good? All right, cool. I wish we had seats for y'all. I don't like seeing women stand, but if y'all okay, you sure? Okay. All right, so before we begin, all right, how many people in here has watched this presentation online before? Raise your hand. You don't count. I know you did. Anybody else? You did? You did too? Okay, a little bit? Okay. So how many people here don't even know who this person is standing in front of you? Raise your hand. You don't even know how you got here. You saw something on social media. So this was interesting. We just won't get it. It's okay. You don't have to be ashamed. Just raise your hand. If you don't know who I am, raise your hand. Because I might ask you some questions. One person? Okay, cool. So, okay, there we go. All right, so how many people do know who I am? Raise your hand. Okay, cool. All right, so the one thing that I will say since we're about to begin is here in New York City, this is where I was born. I was born in the Bronx. I was born on Boynton Avenue and Story Avenue, Crossroads. I don't know if you know who that is. Anybody know who Bronx? Raise your hand. All right, now I never say this in any other lecture or any other chapter launch because they're not New York. They don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm from the Bronx, Boynton, Story Avenue. I went to PS 93. Then my parents took me from there and shipped me all the way to Throg's Neck. I don't know if you know where Throg's Neck is at. They sent me over there because they had a busing program. All the Lord, they get me in there. They gave me some tests for like gifted and special program. I don't know what that is. They gave me some tests and I passed it. I was young. They shipped me out of my community because the neighboring, like I had to cross over to the tracks. There's a, what's that over there in the Bronx? So we're here. So before you get over to the train station, 6 train, there's a little, what's that? It's not a freeway. What is that? Brooklyn Freeway? It's the Brooklyn, you're right. It's not considered a freeway because it's not on the highway. I don't know what it's called. But anyway, so I had to go across there to go to the middle school that was over there. And they wasn't really a good school. My mother, she was not having that. My dad also said, we're not having that. So they tried to find a way to get me out of my community. Which is one of the reasons why we're here and what we're going to discuss. And that's a huge problem. Because it was a lottery, and only me, my brother, and 2 other black kids made it over in that busing program. So we was the only black people in an all-white school in the Bronx Neck. They asked us all types of crazy questions. They'd never seen black people like that before. The kids, now adults obviously, but the kids didn't. They never hung out with black kids, had to ask me what I liked, so I had to find a way to assimilate. And I think I was, how old was I when I was there? I was 8 years old. I was 8 years old when I went there. You know what I'm saying? So I stayed there. From there I went to IS 192. I don't know if you know what that is. That's a middle school, and then from there I went to Herbert H. Lehman High School. And then my last year, I went to Deer Park High School, and I graduated from Deer Park High School, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that one thing that directly affected me is being displaced from my community and brought into another community because my parents wanted me to have the best education I possibly could have. Now, did that pay off? I don't know. Maybe it did. But the problem is, how come I had to be shipped out of my community? Would I have been the same person or had similar advantages if I stayed where I was at? Right? So the question is, a lot of people don't have that privilege to even be shipped out. So what options does that afford kids that don't have parents who can search out and find who to talk to and get their children out of the community? So better school. Well, if you can't do that, then you got to fix something that's currently where you're at. You got to fix it. You have the power to do that. A lot of people say, why are we going to help Babylon? It's not helping Babylon. You're still sending your kids to public school. Yes? A lot of y'all, how many of y'all homeschooling here? Raise your hand. See? You have to now. You have to. You have to now. Now, my kids out in Atlanta, this is all y'all. The individual there, her name is Dr. Echo. She's a professor. So she does university teaching, everything like that. She took her son out of public school because as a teacher, obviously she knows what to look for. She didn't like how they was teaching. She didn't like the style, the identification of being a young black boy, whatever. So she created her own school, private school, with a homeschooling curriculum for our community out in Atlanta. Simply because she didn't like the fact how they was teaching her stuff. So she just created it. So now, it's called the High Academy. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's on my YouTube channel so far. So now, she found me on YouTube Me and her had a conversation before I even knew she had a school, build a rapport, and then she told me, hey, you know, I launched this school, it's been around for about a year, if you want to come check it out. I said, okay, so me and my issue went, we checked it out, and we liked the environment, very small, right? And I was like, okay, yeah, this looks good. So I put my stepson, I put him in there, and he's been there for a couple of years now. I put my daughters, my two daughters, one is 4, one is 3, they're in there. And then my son, he's not here with us now. When he turns 1, he'll be there too. So all my children are in the same location. With the teacher who identifies as an Israelite, who keeps the statutes, laws, and commandments, gives the kids everything they need academically, but the culture of the scriptures is there. Everything's centered around the culture of the scriptures. She created custom curriculums designed around the psychology of young black boys and young black females. As a teacher, she didn't have to do that. Matter of fact, she doesn't even make no money off of this. She hired teachers to give them jobs because she's still a professor. So as a full-time professor, she doesn't have the time to really teach in school, but she does show up there, helps to clean, helps to make meals, sometimes step in if the teachers are not there. So she puts a lot of work and effort in doing that. Why is this important? Because this is in Union City. Anybody familiar with Georgia? No? Okay. So Union City has a lot of us there. A lot of our people in Union City, right? So a lot of times parents will try to get their kids from out of there and use a family member's address. How many of y'all did this before with your kids? Listen, nobody ain't got to see this. Camera's on me, not on you. Use somebody else's address and say the child lives there, get mail or whatever for the child there, to get the kids into a better school. How many of y'all know what a charter school is? Raise your hand. Okay? Y'all know what private schools are too, right? But you know charter schools is also in black communities as well. You know that? I'm not saying all of them are great, but some of them are as an alternative to public schools. And it's free, you don't pay anything. Y'all know that? Yes? Okay. So with the homeschooling curriculum, also what she does at a higher academy is she offers an online homeschooling program that you can enroll your children in from anywhere on the planet. We have it in our community. It's called autonomy. Alright? Now, we not get too far ahead, but when we talk about autonomy, when we get into it, you're going to understand why this is important, because if you need a solution and you realize there's a problem, sometimes the person that realizes the solution has to be the person as the catalyst to change things so a solution can occur. If you sit back and wait for somebody else to do it, it may never happen. This is why I don't ask the Most High for nothing like that no more, because every time there's a problem and I ask him, he says, now you do it. So I shut up. Or I find the means to get it done. And that's why we have KHM. KHM is not a congregation, it's not a camp, it's not a church, it's none of that. It is an organization. How many of y'all are part of an organization outside of the place where you go to worship at? Raise your hand. Or fellowship at. Now give me an example of another organization. Let's say a black organization. Give me an example. Association of Black Social Workers. Association of Black Social Workers. Give me another one. NAACP, right? That's another one. Give me another one. UNIA, that's another one, right? Give me another one. And y'all just removed yourself from all our societies. I don't know what's going on out there, but anybody else? I know some of you know about other organizations, black organizations. If not, that's another problem. You gotta network more. Wow, okay. And I'm not saying that's an issue with y'all, I'm just saying that goes to show where we're at and what we need to do. Right? So we're an organization, we're an Israelite-based organization. That means everybody in the organization identifies as Israel, right? And we have a goal, right? We'll get into that in a second. So typically what I do when I'm here, I go through the prerequisites. Now, if you don't meet these prerequisites, the door is right over there, all right? You can head out, you ain't gotta waste your time, unless you're interested. And then we can talk to you a little further. Nobody's held here against their will, all right? You got it? Yes? Okay. Man, this is the sleepiest crowd I ever did. One of these chapters for. They're like, yo, you know what? Y'all thinking about that food. Nah, y'all thinking about that food. I was like, man, if I can have that quinoa salad that was on there with the water and the tea, which one tastes good? I know that's what y'all thinking right now. So help me do this and we can get to the food, all right? All right, so the first thing is what? Somebody read that.
Identify as an Israelite.
Now, how many of you identify as an Israelite here? Raise your hand. It may not be everybody, but if you don't, that's okay. All right, cool. So that's the majority of everybody. All right, what's the second thing? Practice tours. The reason why practice tours is there because that is our blueprint that we utilize when we engineer the community based on this blueprint. Right? How many of y'all do that? Raise your hand. Okay, it's mostly everybody. And what's the third thing? How many of you are proactive? Sometimes. There you go. How many of you are passive? How many of you are reactive? Raise your hand. All right, so you're being honest now. Now, outside of these prerequisites, how many of y'all in your mind visualize you at some point accomplishing all three of these things? Raise your hand. All right, so that's going to be everybody. All right. And if this is not for you, it's okay, the door is over there. And if you want to kneel before you go out, we'd be more than happy to show you not to doubt. There's no, trust me, there's no strings attached, right? This is simply for you to see the presentation, consider it on your time, and then make your decision, all right? All right. So, does anybody know what KHM is? Raise your hand. Okay. Does anybody know what the acronym KHM means? That should be easy. Y'all, somebody say it. Y'all can say it. All right. So, where did you first encounter KHM?
YouTube.
YouTube.
New Orleans.
So what? New Orleans. No. All right. That's it. YouTube, New Orleans. I'm just going to New Orleans to find out about us, right? No. So you got to go to New Orleans and find out about it because they hear about us out in New Orleans. They know about us. All right. So the reason why I say that is because my name is DivineProspect. I'm what they call the overseer. I guess you look over something. The founder and I'm the spokesman for KHM. But KHM is not me. KHM is actually a group of other people. Right? I just initiated, I gave them the vision, and I let them run it all times. We have different groups and stuff going on, which we'll go into over here. But it exists outside of me. So if anything ever happens to me, this is still going to keep going. And that's the key thing, it's a legacy. What legacy are you leaving behind? Not just for your children, but for your community. You must consider these things. This is why we're in such disarray as a people, because we're not leaving the proper legacies behind. Legacy outlives you. If you have not created anything or made an indelible mark in this life that outlives you, you have more work to do. And the fact that you're sitting here breathing, which means the Creator has given you more time. All right? So this is just part of my legacy. And it's a way for me to give back to the community the way that Yah has given me new life. And this right here is creating new life for others, and it's repurposing of it. That's the key thing. A lot of times people will walk past the junkyard, don't think nothing of it. But somebody with an eye or a vision for restoration, they see things. Oh man, I can do this with this, and I can take that part. Man, you know, in the 70s they used to do A, B, and C with this. They see life in something that is seemingly dead. How many of y'all have ever seen a situation that looks dead and you have breathed life into it? Right? Ezekiel, the Most High brought him up in front of the valley of the what? Dry bones. And then what did the Most High say to him?
Speak life.
He said what? Speak life to what? The dead bones. How many of you ever go to a graveyard and start speaking to the cemetery that's out there? Let me know. Raise your hand. I want to see if y'all living this for real. Raise your hand. Why not? Necromancy, if you talk to them. But if you speak to them so they can come back if they're our people, Yah says to speak to them. So they may not be a literally dead person, that's an analogy, but our people are zombies out there right now. Zombies, they're walking dead. They look like they have life, but in further inspection, you get too close, they try to bite you if you try to help. It's the same thing I say all the time. It's the analogy of a lifeguard. How many of y'all have done a lifeguard in your life before? Raise your hand. Nobody's a lifeguard. All right. How many of you can swim? Raise your hand. As you know, they say black people don't swim. I'm surprised to see a lot of hands up. So some of y'all went to Kips Bay. You know what Kips Bay is? I don't know if you know what Kips Bay is. I used to go to Kips Bay. You know what Kips Bay is? Boys and Girls Club? Okay, all right. Or PAL, what's that? Police Athletic League. You know they take all those programs out of our community, right? YMCA. Most of them out of our community now. Why? Why they take it out of our community? Because it teaches you how to be self-sufficient. You can't give black people too many means of self-sufficiency. Their power is in our dependence, not our independence. That is what they fear, right? But nonetheless, the key thing is, in having these options in the community, things that allow the children to see other aspects of life and learn other things, they are being regenerated and restored. And the key thing is we have to bring those things back to the community, and that's why this is here. That's the main reason why the Most High told me to create it, because it creates opportunity. The best thing you can do for anybody is give them an opportunity. If somebody is homeless, you can give them money, but they're going to spend it the next day and have nothing. But if you teach them how to give a home with some knowledge about the real estate markets and places they can auction for just $5 and get a home. Did y'all know that? Holler at me after this is over. But if you teach them how to do this, you give them a skill where they can take care of themselves, there's no need for you to keep seeing them on that same corner and give them $5, $10, $20. The opportunity, if they're serious, they'll take advantage of it and they can provide for themselves. That's the key thing, all right? So let's get into the mission. Can y'all hear me? Am I okay to hear me? I think they had like a speaker system, but there's no mic, so we have to make do like this, all right? I'll talk as loud as I can, all right? So we're going to go start first with the mission statement. Can somebody read this for me? Anybody? Yes.
Mission statement. We are a ministry organization charged with being a herald for the kingdom of Yah to come. Harbingers go before a king or army to announce their arrival and make lodgings for their arrival. We are bringing awareness of Yah to our community and preparing them to be received by Yah.
Got it? That's pretty clear? So a herald is what? What is a herald? What's a herald?
An announcer.
An announcer. Somebody makes an announcement with something, right? So as a harbinger, and you probably hear the negative connotation, a harbinger is normally an omen of something that precedes something bad that's going to happen. That's a connotation that the word took on much later. But initially it had to do with a messenger that would go before a king or an army. A good example in pop culture, how many of y'all saw the movie 300? Raise your hand. They sent the black guy to do the dirty work. So a bunch of white people, right? Look very strange to the dark colored person going to some white people saying, hey, do you want to keep all of this? Tell me that does not look weird to you. Just be honest. A lot of us probably didn't even notice that, right? So they sent the black guy to go do the dirty work, and what did he go and say to them? Anybody? The same message that they give to our people today. What message did he give to them? Let me see him here. Remember that movie 300. He came there to speak to him. He went to Leonidas, right? And what he said? Why?
Because he took the heads of the kings before him.
And what did they promise them?
Oh, riches and glory.
They promised them stuff they already had. If you come join us, we'll let you keep the things you already have, and then you can be part of what we're doing. Wait, I already got this. Why? It doesn't make any sense. And that's what happened and how people of color no longer have ownership of resources. At least natural resources. Because we've been tricked out of it. Anytime somebody sees potential in something that you're offering, and they're willing to give you a high price for it, don't sell. Why? You would think, nah, I can make a lot of money. Don't sell it. Why?
It's got to be worth more.
Yeah, it's worth more than what they're offering you. They're not stupid. They're not going to give you something. Okay, so y'all follow. So as a herald, we announce Yah's arrival. We tell the people that Yah's coming, but that's not the end of it. Once you tell somebody Yah's coming, it's not enough. You have to prepare them to receive him. And then, on top of that, we have to be a prepared people for him to receive us. Because if you just announce it, it's not enough for people to know how to get in line so they can make it to that banquet. How many of y'all went to a wedding ceremony before? Raise your hand. Okay, so after the wedding is over, what's the next phase called? Say it loud. Reception. And what do you typically do at the reception? Eat, dance, and stuff like that. If you meet, you learn a two-step, do your two-step, right? But some of you know how to dance, right? So you dance, whatever. But before you can get to that point, you have to be what?
Accepted, invited.
Then you got to be invited. Somebody has to send you an invitation. Otherwise, they'll just be telling you about it, and you're going to know, not even going to know what you missed, right? So the key thing is, we're going to tell people that the kingdom is coming, but we're also preparing them so the king can receive them, and they can receive the king. All right? That's important. So it's a whole process. Now, who wants to read the next part? Anybody? If not, I'll read it. The next one is our favorite people, right? So accomplish this. We are restoring culture to our people to form more close-knit and proactive communities with the goal of becoming, what's that word? Autonomous. By becoming autonomous, we can be set apart and allow God to receive us and us to receive Him. This will enable the remnant to inherit the coming kingdom. What is autonomy? All together, what else? Somebody said it? Self-sufficiency and self-governance. To be able to govern your own affairs and be able to provide for the welfare of those you are governing over. Do we have that in the black community? We have little pockets of it, but we don't have it as concentrated as if how many of y'all saw Squid Games? Sometimes I gotta mention stuff that you already watched. I know everybody in here know about Squid Games, right? Raise your hand. You don't know what it's about? That's a crazy movie. Series. That blew my mind. I was like, oh, and now it's a fad, right? So Squid Games. Why am I mentioning Squid Games? It takes place where? What geographical location on the earth it takes place? Korea. Right? There's Korean communities here in New York City.
Yes.
Right? If I'm in Korea and I come into America, Fred will say, hey, take this card, call so-and-so when you get there, and they'll take care of you.
That's right.
I come over here, look for that community. Sometimes in neighborhoods, little China, I go right there, I speak to so-and-so. We got a bed for you here, we got a job for you, we got kids, we got a school here. Take care of everything. Show me one place in, where you from the Bronx, you from Jersey, from Brooklyn, or you from New Orleans, right? Show me what place I can go to the black community and say, hey, look, I got my kids. I just came from so-and-so, so-and-so. You got me? Or the welfare services down the street. That's what we do. Welfare services, so we want to send them back to the state. Who's probably going to take those kids, because the parents don't have a house for the kids to live in. Parents probably going to be on the street because they ain't got no jobs to afford paying rent. They're going to be begging for food because they cannot provide for themselves. And who's to blame for that? Them? Maybe 50%, but what's the other 50%? Us!
We are.
How come I can go to the East Indian community? If I'm East Indian, ask for help, they got me. Jewish community in East Brooklyn, raise your hand. Which Jewish, those who know about Jewish community in East Brooklyn, raise your hand. I've been there several times. They got everything. And Hebrew and everything, everything. Ambulance comes and says Hebrew. Ambulance in Hebrew. The school buses in Hebrew. They got their own little university here, a place for the senior citizens, all of that. And they expanded. So if I was Jewish and I came dropped right in the middle of New York City, I was asking my, hey, where the Jews at? Oh yeah, they so-and-so. I go right there, find somebody, speak to them in my language, because that goes to show you in the culture. And then say, okay, we got you. We got a place for you to stay, we got a job. But if somebody takes me and drop me in the middle of Trenton, what's going to happen to me there? I'll probably get shot. Probably get robbed. Let's say, oh, you need some help? Come over here. Come here. Rob me and everything. You know what I'm saying? Not saying all of us are criminals, but what I'm simply saying is we don't have no way to take care of those if they're in need. Not in totality, not as an ethnic block. And this is how they're able to get the things that they want, because you only protest when you don't have power. When you have power, you negotiate. We had this whole Asian hate crime thing going on. You know what happened? A couple of Asians ran up into the White House, smacked by them side of the head and said, yo, fill this out, sign this right here. Let us know when you're done. We're going to be right outside the door. What did he do? Sign everything into law.
That's right. That's right.
We've been getting killed for 200, 300 years. How many laws on the book to protect us? Somebody raise their hand. Any executive order that's been placed to protect us as a people, raise your hand. I'll wait.
We got 0.
I'll give you $100 if you can name one.
Everybody think about civil rights.
Look at that, quiet. How many times you seen Jewish people protest in the street because the police have shot somebody down? Raise your hand. Shot one of their own down. Raise your hand. Well, no hands going up? Okay. They shot an East Indian and they protested in the street. Show that to me.
The Jews? Or the East Indians?
East Indians now. East Indians now.
Oh, yeah.
Show me. Raise your hand. A Korean shot dead in the street. And the people are protesting. Raise your hand. Just raise your hand. When you attack Asians now, guess what? That's a felony. Felony. You're going to jail for a long time. All they got to do is say hate crime. That's it. You shoot a black person? See that? I ain't even saying nothing. You shoot a black person. You shoot a black person. It's just a black person. Okay.
Good job.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, clean our streets up. Yes.
So the law is on the books, but for us, they say you have to have said, you know, like, I'm going to beat you, or something like that. Where with the Asians, it's just that I'm white, or I'm black, you're Asian, it's over.
It's a done deal.
It's a done deal.
Or the LGBTQ community. community.
Right.
Plus, can't forget the plus. If you do something against that community, it's a wrap for you. That's it. You know that, right? Raise your hand if you know that. They got a lot of laws. You know who started those laws? Obama. Y'all voted for Obama. Raise your hand. Who voted for Obama? Raise your hand. Now, some of y'all did, but now you're ashamed to raise your hand. Name one law that Obama put in place to protect black people. I'll wait.
He was protecting his wife.
He protecting his interests. How many black groups lobbied for Obama? Lobby. Meaning that, what is a lobbyist? Raise your hand if you know what a lobbyist is. What's a lobbyist? Anybody? What's a lobbyist? And if you don't know, then that means we're not getting involved, and this is why we're in the mess again. What's a lobbyist?
Somebody you pay money to, they go to the Senate or Congress to get whatever bill or
To become an advocate
Right.
for the voice of their community.
Right.
How many of y'all got those in your community going down to Congress, the legislature, the judicial house? How many of y'all doing that? Raise your hand, let me see. Oh, okay. This is why we have problems. Because we want to chant down Babylon, right? How many of y'all want to chant down Babylon? Most High come, Maranatha, all that good stuff. Chant down Babylon. Raise your hand if you want to chant down Babylon. Chant down because we're being oppressed. They got a foot on our necks. But you know what the problem is? In order for Babylon to be chanted down, Moses got a judge.
Right.
Now, in Egypt, when Moshe came back to redeem his people by the hand of Yah, right? And all those plagues was going down, there was something that was said about Goshen. What was said about Goshen? It was untouched. You got a Goshen?
I'm in the South Bronx.
Yes. That's the answer right there. You got a Goshen, sis? Okay. You got a Goshen? Where is our autonomous community so when Most High judges this place, we can sustain ourselves till the judgment is over? Raise your hand. And if you don't got it, that's why you're here. That's what we want to talk about. That's what we're here to do. We need our own Goshens to self-sustain the things that we have vested in each other. So when God judges, because you always pray for him to judge, I be going on Twitter all the time, people say, Most High judge this place, I don't want to be here no more. But you got to realize, you're going to be here while it's being judged. You have to prepare yourself so the judgment does not befall upon you. And if you create these Goshens, a self-sufficient community, then while it's being judged, you can be taken care of. You can be supplied. You have a place to go to while God's doing his work. And if you don't have that, then we need to do it now. Look at these current events. It's serious. We ain't got a lot of time. I ain't going to be acting like I'm any Nabi or no prophet and tell you when. We don't have a lot of time. But that's why this was created, right? Implementing cultural autonomy in the community through research and application, all right? So, how many of y'all seen the KHM logo? I know a lot of people get confused with this logo. How many of y'all seen the KHM logo? Raise your hand. Somebody tell me what's going on in that logo. This is why I had to add this part. Man blowing the horn. Shofar. Okay, that's one part. Good.
Say it again.
See that? Look, people didn't even realize that. Go ahead.
It says shofar.
See, I messing people up. You must have watched something or something I said that back there. Okay, so a man blowing shofar. What else is in that logo? Before I put it up, let's see if y'all remember. So what? Told them the Torah. Okay, what else?
That's not the logo yet.
Now I'm gonna show you this in the logo.
The lion.
A lot of people don't see that. I'm gonna show you the logo. What else is in there?
I see colors.
What colors are there?
Is that the Pan-African colors?
But what colors is it? Ants is right up there.
Red.
Black and green, right? Okay, we're gonna get into that. What else is it? What else is going on in the logo? Lions. There you go. Okay. And something else. So let's get into it, right? That's it right there, right? Now, I had this logo since 2014. I have a designer that's working on making a 3D resume. It's gonna be slightly different than this. But this is one I've been using since 2014. How many years is that? 7 years?
7.
Yeah. So I added this part. So that's not part of the logo, but this is the logo right here, right? So we're gonna go into the colors, right? So you said it was red, black, and green, right? Now, if you think about red, black, and green, what comes to mind? Marcus Garvey.
Right.
What was Marcus Garvey's objective? Pan-Africanism. What was his objective for our people here? Because you know he was in Harlem, right? He had a whole procession in Harlem, right? What was he trying to do with his people?
Create Goshen here for us.
There you go.
Okay.
Now, you know he never set foot in Africa.
Right.
Never in his life. He died without even seeing Africa. That's deep. You're talking about bringing people together as Africans, leave your religion at the door, so we can build an autonomous community. He built the Starliner. You know what the Starliner is? The ship that he created?
Right.
All of that was hijacked. So, but the key thing was, how do we make these people, these debased people at the bottom of the food chain, how do we turn them into an autonomous state no matter where they're at on this globe? Because it wasn't just here in America. You know, he's not even from North America. He's from the Caribbean islands, right? And a lot of those immigrants was coming here. Josiah Ford, how many of you know who Josiah Ford is? Where's he from? Barbados. Barbados. Jamaican, Marcus Garvey, or what do you call Barbadians? Asians. Coming over here to America, right? They're trying to help the plight of our people here. So what did red, black, and green stand for? Him and the UNIA decided on those colors. Just want to see if I know a basis of yes.
I think the red means red stands for the blood of the ancestors.
What else?
Black for the people. And green for the land and the resources.
The land that we lost, right? Okay. So that was it. So red has to do with the blood of our descendancy from our ancestors. Black has to do with the people, because that's a byword. What does black mean? What's black? It's the color. It's black. What's black? Black, what is black? Now, I understand black power. Okay, cool. Because I'm with that. I understand black to say, oh, that's the essence of who we are. Oh, that sounds good. But as far as the people, who's black? Anybody. Anybody can be. Look, I'm going to tell you something funny, right? I was on our job application this a couple years ago. I said, what if I put whites? Instead of another one saying black. I did that. And they picked the application that said white. And when I got, there's an interview and all of that. My white voice and all of that, right? I showed up the interview, right? I showed up the interview, they looked at like, are you here to represent Mr. So-and-so? I said, no, I'm him. They said, like, what? They looked at my application again. I said, yeah, I'm white. Is something wrong? I said, oh, I thought in America I could choose to identify with whatever I want. Are you discriminating against the fact that I'm saying I'm white? He said, no, sir, I'm sorry, brother. Sit down and have the interview. Needless to say, I didn't get the job. But anyway, it was an experiment. It works. All right? So the key thing is black doesn't really mean anything. However, in a modern connotation, black has to do with our people that's here, right? People who are melanated with color, right? However, it does not connect you to a direct ancestor. It does not connect you to a particular inheritance in a particular place of land. At the same time, it doesn't endow you with any inherent, I would say, possessions or any kind of inheritable wealth or any kind of inheritable descendancy from somebody that's prominent. Black is just a byword that's used to encompass a division between two classes of people based on an interruption in the lifestyle of one class of people for the benefit of the other class of people. And then the justification behind that, which was used scripturally to say the curse of Ham. Which is crazy because Ham was never cursed. Genesis 9. Somebody get Genesis 9 verse 1 and we're going to move on. Genesis 9 verse 1. Somebody read that for me. You're going to see why Ham can't be cursed. Genesis 9 verse 1. Very easy.
Genesis what?
Genesis chapter 9 verse 1.
Got it?
And whoever got it first, you can read.
I got it.
And God blessed Noah.
And God what?
God blessed Noah. And his son.
And who else?
And his son.
And who else?
His son.
Wait, hold on. So the Most High blessed Noah and his sons. You can't curse what God blessed. You want an example of that? You want to go to the book of Numbers with Balak and Balaam? The king was like, yo, to the prophet, yo, curse these people, yo. And he said, all right, give me a second. Went to the Most High. Now mind you, this is not an Israelite. Most High speaking to him. He realized, oh, look, listen, I don't care how much money you try to give me. I can't bless what y'all, I can't curse what y'all has blessed. So the king didn't understand that because in their culture, in order for the king to have justification to destroy a people, he has to have the priest or a prophet sanctify the action. Because they speak on behalf of the patron deity. And now, his prophet that he normally pays a little bit of money for to give him some words saying, I can't do this. Something that that king has never encountered in his life. You cannot curse what Yah has blessed. Ham was not cursed. The problem was his firstborn son was who? And what happens is, when the father does something detestable, the father typically has an inheritance that he passes on to who? The firstborn son. So the curse or the consequence is that your firstborn son will never have a place to inhabit for himself. And there's sources outside the scriptures that validate that the reason why Canaan received the curse is because he tried to take land that was not rightfully his. But I did a whole lecture on that, that's other than itself. So the key thing is, they use this color black to label you, to remove you from any entitlements. What is black? What is that? Any other group, they have a nationality. Black is not a nationality. Any more in here? Okay, I was about to ask some more questions. Anyway, all right, so let's move on, right? Red is what? Somebody read that.
The love of our ancestors running through us, which they still for us. It must be redeemed by our actions today. All the scattered diaspora is united by this.
Are you the manifestation of the dreams of your ancestors today? Or are you letting them down? Anybody? Are you the manifestation of the dreams of your ancestors today? Or are you currently letting them down?
Right now, I'm not, we here.
And that's a start.
Our manifestation of what they dream.
A revelation, or we the express action of what they were dreaming. So when our ancestors, and we talk about ancestors in different scenarios. So let's say the ancestors, if we go back to the time of Israel, who disobeyed and was exiled out the land, if they was thinking about what state we would be in today, are we making them proud? If they were still alive today to see what we're doing today. I just told you, if you're Korean, you got some place to go. No matter where you at. Because you know, Asians in Africa now. So wherever you go, you can find an Asian and say, hey, do you know some Koreans? Put me to Koreans and I'm going to go there. East Indians, put me to East Indian. Jews, put me to a Jew. Muslim, also. Arabs, put me to somebody. They got some place to go, food, shelter, job, anything. Black people, yeah, man, I don't know. You want welfare office down the street. You need welfare, right? You need help? So now I'm coming to you, I'm asking you, like, remember we read earlier, Hebrews 13 and 1 said what? Let brotherly love continue. Remember I told you about having the almonds, and the new people that come in, did they get almonds and pistachios? You can give anybody that's still, who didn't get their almonds and pistachios? Raise your hand. Okay, yes, they need their almonds and pistachios, okay. So that's the custom of giving a gift that we mentioned earlier, right? So we have to be able to give gifts to our people or accommodations in the event that something is going awry. We cannot do that. We have failed. We have no Goshen. So you want Babylon to be chanted down, but you have no resources to sustain yourself while Yah's judging this nation. The Most High destroys the money system. Y'all good? Okay. And they make it so that way you have to get a mark to send your kids to school. You can homeschool, raise your hand. And they said the same thing for the hospitals. Can you home birth? Raise your hands. Okay, some of y'all, but that should be everybody. Even if you're not doing it, the option should be there. If it's not, we have a big problem. Alright? So the next one is what? Black is what?
The byword representation of our identity and hue in the diaspora.
That's important. Because black and brown as well. How many of y'all know about the brown berets? Raise your hand. Yeah, raise your hand. Okay, check this out. How many of y'all seen the movie Judas and the Black Messiah? Raise your hand. Alright. Y'all didn't see the brown berets in there?
Yeah.
Do y'all know who they are? Anybody, raise your hand. Say what? Puerto Ricans, and what about them? They were nationalists like the other black nationalists. And they worked side by side with the Black Panthers. Now, I'm going to show you something that's very interesting from that movie. What's one of the first groups that Huey P. Newton went to? When he first started, and then his successor that came much later that we see in the film. What's one of the first groups in his community that he went to when he realized he had to get black power? No, not the Brown Berets. He went to the gangs.
Oh, the gang.
It's like in Chicago. Who did he go to in the film? When the movie first opened up, who did he go to? It was a fictitious name, but it was actually a real gang, right? Who did he go to? What was the name of the gang that he went to in the film, in the beginning? And him and a couple of his people, they went to the gang by themselves. The what? black peace songs, historically a black peace song, they're not called that in the film. He went to the gang to say, look, we need to unite. Because all the issues that we're facing as a community, you're still facing it too. And at first, they didn't receive him because propaganda was being put out that him and the black nationalists was against the gang members.
Oh, I remember that.
FBI did that. Right? So a lot of times when we're looking for unity, sometimes you're looking for righteous people all the time. That's a problem. That's a problem. Keywords all the time. That's a problem. Because sometimes you overlook the people that need it the most. That's why we look at the Israelite community that's growing. A lot of our numbers come from brothers and sisters from off the street. Can Khan? You know, I don't go to them and say, yo, you gotta be righteous. How can I tell you that when you don't know what that is? How can I tell you that unless I can show you what it is? So that's the key thing. So knowing that these are still your people. Yes, they're in a different circumstance than you. Yes, they may be in a game, maybe doing this and that, but they're still being faced by the same oppression that you are. We just have two different outcomes, but it's from the same source, right? Next in green, the chosen land of our ancestors that was lost due to their captivity, that we will eventually be restored to. These three colors are a representation of these three ideologies right here, right? Symbols. Lions represents the royal strength of Yah's kingdom to come. The reason why there's two lions, anybody know Hebrew grammar? In here, raise your hand. A little bit of Hebrew grammar, anybody? No? Okay, if not, I got a great class if y'all want to get into it, if you want to learn Hebrew. There's something called the PL stem in Hebrew, right? The PL stem is the intensive action. So instead of saying, I threw the ball, I gunned the ball, that's an intensive action. And in Hebrew, you double the middle consonant. Hebrew has a shoresh or root that has 1, 2, 3 consonants called the triconsonantal root. The consonant in the middle is doubled by dagesh or a dot that's placed in the middle to show an intensive action. So when you have two of something, it represents a double emphasis or an intensive. That's why there's two lines here. Because Yah's kingdom and the strength of his kingdom is greater than any single entity or polity that's on this planet. You realize that? His hand is the strings pulling everything. Okay. The man, somebody said this is the man right here. See what he, okay, so he has a prayer shawl on, there's the bread book in his hand, that's his hand and his thumb right here. This is a shofar. He's blowing the shofar, he's holding a Torah. That's what this is, yeah, I know. You see when I do that, you say, oh, I see it now. It's like, what's that game that you play? It's a game that I play when you draw a picture and it has to be somewhat abstract but also have to represent something and then people have to guess what it is and then when you tell them all of a sudden, yeah, I knew that. But why didn't you answer the question? Why didn't you tell us what it was? Is sometimes you need somebody to show it to you. It's already in your face, but somebody got to point out the details. You say, oh, okay, now it makes sense, right? Blowing the shofar representing the heralding of Yah's kingdom and his people. The book represents the Torah, which is the cultural literature that connects us. It is the blueprint that when you engineer it properly, you can take care of almost every societal ill that you experience in the community. Did y'all know that? Y'all shaking your head. All right, cool. So let's say there's a debt issue. How do you fix that based on Torah? Let's make it practical. Black community has the heaviest debt than any other ethnic group in America. Black community. Even though we push $1.6 billion in consumerism, how we get all this money and we in the heaviest debt? That is a mystery. No, it's not. But it sounds like it's a mystery. $1.6 trillion that we spend. But we have the heaviest debt. How do you fix that? Using Torah.
Stop spending.
Stop what?
Stop spending.
Stop spending, okay. So you switch from consumer to producer, right? So that way you can have an even balance. That you're not consuming more than you're producing. Because in a natural environment, in permaculture, you know what permaculture is? Permaculture is the way that you live on the land with the most minimal carbon footprint. What's the carbon footprint? I know I'm just throwing stuff out there. I know. All is connected. Carbon footprint is the amount of waste you leave behind or destruction you leave behind from being someplace. So if I live in a forest, I'm not going to overconsume the fish in the river because if I do that, then everything else breaks down. So I'm only going to take what I need for the day. When the Most High in Exodus chapter 16 gave the manna for heaven, he said only take the amount of what? The omer of what? Of the manna, based on your household size. That's called equity, not equality. If I have 6 kids, you have 2 kids, and we both give 1 emer or omer, guess what? I'm going to lose out. But equity dictates, because I have 6 kids, I get enough just for my family. You get enough just for your family. You don't envy me because I get a little bit more than you, because I can justify because I have other mouths to feed. Right? So that is, when we go back to that mindset, we rewind and we go back and we look at it from I guess an eagle's eye vantage point, then you get to understand the equity of the situation. Came time? Okay. Anybody have any questions so far? Any points you want to point out before we move? I know I'm saying a lot, I know I'm throwing stuff out there, but all of it is relevant. You'll see how it's connected, right? Let me just move forward. Circles represent culture, community, and autonomy that surrounds us and keeps us within our purpose. So there's 3 circles, 1, 2, 3. So you have culture, and with culture you want to reconstruct it. That means put it back together and then restore it so that it works in a contemporary environment, not the same environment from the past, but how it works today. That's why I asked you, debt. Debt was a problem. In ancient Israel, how did they fix debt? Well, they had a Jubilee year. Just a Jubilee year. And what happened? So you had 2 Jubilees, one for the people and one for the land. So what happened to the people during the year of Jubilee? All debts are what? Release. Now you know America don't care about us, so they don't care about the scriptures. Otherwise, we all be debt free. We just got to wait 7 years. But when it comes to credit, we think the principal comes for 7 years and comes off the credit report. Where do you think that comes from? That comes from our culture. They're benefiting more from our culture than we are. And then people who y'all call imposters are way more benefiting off the culture than we are. How is that? If it's yours, how are they benefiting more than you are? Because they taught you to disconnect yourself from that. You're not those people. The law's done away with. You don't need none of that. That's it. So we created a program called Jubilee Main Mission, where the objective is to eliminate debts, because we want to bring that Jubilee back to our community. There's a way that can be done. Right? So everything forward. All right. Israelites carried out culture, community, autonomy, post-exile. So, I'm not going to go into too much of this right now, because I want to save some time, because I know it's kind of late now, and I know you want to eat. So, Northern Tribes, 2 Kings, chapter 17, verse 5, 7 to 8, 15, 18 to 20, talks about them being removed out of the land, okay, by the Assyrians. All right? 2 Kings 25, 8 to 12, and Jeremiah 52, 26 to 30 talks about the southern tribes being removed out of the land. Okay, you're familiar with the story, correct? So I have to reread it. All right. What does that say right there? Elephantine Pathway, right? What does this say right here? Might be a little bit. Al-Yahudu tablets. Have y'all heard of either one of these things? 1, 2. Okay, that's good. All right, so there's an image here, and there's an image here. This is cuneiform, right here. And this is Aramaic. That's one papyri. Okay? So, Elephantine papyri connects you to what the northern tribes were doing in their exile, the Al-Yahudu tablets. And again, you can write these things down, go back and research it. So we don't have a lot of time to get into it. It's what the southern tribes were doing when they were first exiled. The first time they was exiled after these events that's here in the scripture. What do you think they were doing? Let me see. They were praying, asking Jesus to come. That's what they were doing. Man, nobody laughed at that. They say, don't talk about Jesus. I'm just saying. They sitting down, praying, asking for Jesus to come, or praying for a Messiah to come. What were they doing?
Had their own community.
Had their own community. In exile. That's interesting. So when they were exiled, they didn't sit down and wait. They didn't sit and assimilate into the culture fully. They never did that. They had to do it to survive, right? But they were doing things. Why? Somebody get Jeremiah chapter 29. Anybody? Jeremiah chapter 29. Read verses 1 and 3.
Now these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem.
Can you stand up and say that?
Now these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem unto the residue of the elders which were carried away captive, and to the priests, and to the prophets, and to all the people.
So this went out to everybody, big and small. Go ahead.
And to all the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had carried away captive from Jerusalem to Babylon.
What did he say?
Jump
down. What did he say? To be in quotation. Where you at? What verse you at? Should be in start at verse 4. What's verse 4?
Thus saith the Lord of hosts.
What did he say?
This God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon.
Wait, who caused that? No, who caused that? Who caused them to be carried away? The Most High did, right? I did. In Hebrew, you have the heatful stem, which is the causative stem. That means something caused the subject to commit the action, right? Keep going.
Whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon. Build ye houses.
Do what?
Build ye houses.
Wait, I just passed by Wagner houses. I ain't seen nobody build nothing over there. They said what?
Build ye houses.
Build houses. How many of you know how to build a makeshift shelter if you need to? Raise your hand. When you practice Sukkot, you learn how to do things. All right, keep going. What else?
And dwell in them. And plant gardens.
Plant gardens.
And eat the fruit of them.
So provide your own shelter and provide your own form of sustenance. How many of y'all got gardens in your backyard? Raise your hand. And if you're in a concrete jungle, how many of you have them in your house on your windowsill? Growing food, growing herbs, vegetables. Raise your hand. Let me see. If not, I have a great solution for you. It's called the Arrow Garden. I mentioned that in my video. I don't know if you paid attention to that, but you can grow your own food, even if you live in an apartment. You don't even have to put it by the windowsill. Keep going.
Take ye wives, get sons and daughters, and take the wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands, that they may bear sons and daughters, that ye may be increased there and not diminished.
Slow down. So, it's talking about arranged marriages, right? Right. Now, I know that sounds bad. Some people say, man, that sounds bad. I got no freedom of choice. But it's a protective element to ensure that the seed continues from the people who it's coming from. That's right. That's right. You marry within your home, within your own community. Sometimes you have to arrange marriages. Now, arranged marriages in Israelite culture is not robotic. Because when the servant of Abraham was getting a wife for Isaac, he went through the arid region, went by a well after he prayed and said, Moses, I don't know what to do. If I find some woman that does A, B, and C, I know it's her. He bumps into Rebecca. She entreats him with hospitality and then brings him to her father, and they have a conversation. But before everything is finished, the father asks Rebecca, is this what you want to do? So you still have the choice. So it's not like the women are being oppressed. Women are not considered property in the scriptures. That's going to make sure you're aware of it. If anybody says that they are, show it to me. The only people that was considered property is the spoils of war. Not within your own. It's different. The word is there. The verbiage is there. Key thing is, you have to say so. So if a parent arranges a marriage with another parent, and then they go to the child and say, do you want to be with this person? You have the option to say yes or no. And typically it will be people that you have watched growing up within your community. So the child, and at that time they're not going to be a child, after your rites of passage, you're old enough to make that decision and prepare yourself at 12, 13 when puberty hits, because culture responds to biological changes, responds to environmental changes, responds to political changes, responds to social changes. Culture has a way where it addresses each and every one of these things. They may not understand everything to its minute or minute detail, but it responds to it in a way in which it is proactively positive and beneficial to the community through by means of trial and error. So, arranged marriages seem to have worked because over time, if you live in the same village or community, you see everybody growing up. And if the parents are going to pick somebody that's compatible with you, you also have to say so to say yes or say no. That's important. So this is the thing we're saying. While you're in exile, you're going to be amongst a different people altogether. How do you maintain your community? You got to arrange marriages. Well, if you look at other cultures, they do that. They arrange marriages amongst themselves, and they keep the wealth in the community. They keep the property in the community. They keep their identity in the community. Okay. I'm just saying. All right. Keep going.
And seek the peace of the city.
You got to read this slow. Read that slow and powerful.
and seek the peace of the city.
Seek the peace of the city. What's the word there for peace in Hebrew? Shalom. Go ahead.
Whether have caused you to be carried away
Most
captive.
High caused you to be carried away in the city that you're seeking peace for. Keep going.
And pray unto the Lord for it.
Wait. What? Do what?
And pray unto the
No.
Lord
I'm
for it.
chanting down Babylon, right?
And pray unto the Lord for
You
it.
want me to pray for the city that you caused me to be carried into? Well, why? Keep going.
For it, pray to the Lord for it. For in the peace thereof shall ye have peace.
This is why you ain't got peace in your city today. Crime has skyrocketed in New York City. Did y'all know that?
Yes, it has.
Skyrocketed. And it's blatant and brazen now. I've seen so many, what they call those cameras that they have on the corners
Right.
for things going on in New York. I'm like, yo, this is crazy. And you know they have cameras almost everywhere in New York.
Right.
Crime is out of control. And what y'all doing? Chanting down Babylon. That's all y'all doing. You want Babylon to fall. You can sit down, brother. That's good. You want Babylon to fall, but yet some of y'all got children that's out there acting crazy too. That means most likely gonna take them too. How many of y'all seeking the peace of the city that you live in? Raise your hand. Seek the peace of the city, and that word pray there, bad translation, should be interpose. Interpose on this behalf before Yah. Now, an example of interposing on something's behalf, Abraham and Lot. When the messengers came to Abraham, they said, we gotta go handle some work in Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham heard that, prayed to the Most High. What did he say to the Most High? If you find 50 righteous, will you spare the city? Think about that. He had to work with the Most High. Most High said, all right, I find 50, I spare it. So wait. Okay, wait. Is he thinking it's not me? Lot then? He ain't got 50 people with him. All right. What about 40 people? Most High said yes. 20 people. Most High said yes. Most High said that he will spare the city if there are righteous people in it. What do you mean spare the city? Spare those who are righteous within the city while everybody else is judged. That's the key thing. And if he has to remove them, like Lot, he will take them out. But Lot only got out because of Abraham. But guess what? Abraham was supposed to bring Lot with him in the first place. Some of y'all missed that. Some of y'all bringing the wrong people to where y'all trying to take you because you're too familiar with them. You got too much compassion on them. He said, leave your kinfolk. Lot was his kinfolk, I was his nephew.
That's right.
Leave them. And what you'll watch and you'll see in the story is that Lot became his Achilles heel. Abraham had to keep going to save this guy. He had to split everything he had because this guy was getting popular and said, all right, you take your stuff and go that way. All because you want to take people who you're very familiar with to the next level. It's not going to work. When Moses went to the mountain, the people was afraid to go to the mountain, but he had his inner circle with him. They only came up to a certain point. Then the Most High said, come by yourself. Leave them, come by yourself. So sometimes your inner circle, sometimes you have to be removed from them so y'all can deal with you. And sometimes you're praying for people when you should be praying for people. Most High told Jeremiah, stop praying for these people. He wrote a whole book called Lamentations. He kept crying. Kept praying for people. Oh my God, this is happening. Most High said, man up. Doing too much. Stop praying for these people. Most times, sometimes, I'm going to tell you stop praying for people. Why? Because people you love sometimes got to go through judgment. You get in the way. Move out the way. Let y'all work. And peradventure, if it's His will and they survive, then they will understand the entire journey you was going through this whole time. Sometimes you want to stop people from being judged because you love them too much. But that's part of love. They need correction. Sometimes your correction is not enough. Otherwise, they'd be right in order. Sometimes you gotta let God correct. So anyway, so Jeremiah 29, 1 to 14, keep going to 14. It's a passage that's read in the church all the time. For I know my plans that I have towards you. How many of y'all know that scripture? Man, I was in church, they used to say that all the time.
All the time.
I was surprised, it sounds good. Then I read the entire context and said, wait, this is about Israel in captivity, and by them building houses, creating vineyards, doing arranged marriages, keeping their people together so that they increase and don't decrease. We getting killed out here, we decreasing. Decreasing, not just from crime, but from health issues, all types of problems. Grandma had a house, gentrification is coming down the street, remove grandma from our house, give her $10,000, even though her house is worth $400,000 in equity, move out the house with $10,000, and they take grandma's house. Put grandma in some kind of home somewhere. Grandma has nothing to leave for you. Scripture says that a prudent man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. That means whatever you do, it shouldn't be just for your children, it's your grandchildren. Why? Because sometimes that's the last generation you see before you close your eyes. How do you know the fruit of your labor is bearing fruit? And when something bears fruit, a tree bears fruit, it's never for itself. Show me one tree that eats the fruit that it makes. Kane, Khan, you follow me? You with me? Okay. Alright. So the key thing is taking care of the community, right? When they were exiled, they created their own communities. They didn't sit and wait, say, okay, let me see who's gonna do this, who's gonna do that. They didn't sit and assimilate, because you know, that's a trick that they did with black people, quote unquote, after the Civil War. What happened? They took us off, most of us, some of y'all don't realize this, some of us were still on plantations, because they refused to leave, they had nowhere to go. They said, Master, I'm gonna stay here with Rob with you, Master, and I ain't got nowhere to go. They didn't know what to do. Now the black Seminoles were a little different, because when they left, they learned the land, they taught the natives there, and they fought back. They became the biggest terrorist threat to the United States at the time. I don't know if y'all realize that. Same thing that J. Edgar Hoover said about the Black Panthers. They were the greatest domestic terrorist threat to the entire country. Now that's the wildest thing I've ever heard in my life. The most impoverished people, you telling me, most impoverished people are the biggest threat? Because they don't want nothing from you. People keep thinking about the Black Panthers as all we're in our community. They had over 66 programs, social programs for the community. Free lunch was started by them. Free lunch started by them. Government co-opted. Took the credit for themselves. So this generation don't even realize that's where it came from. But you want to keep thinking the government. Yes, that's it.
I just wanted to mention that to think that we are not doing like the Jewish community stuff, that they encourage for them to have a lot of children.
Correct.
We would have had so many more male in our community. I'm just still trying, I'm just still to think that we're not having as many children as their communities encourage their women. Can you imagine how many more boys they have? Boys and girls, but because the boys, the male is the strength of the community.
And there's a reason why I'm going to say two things based on that real quick, but I want to run through this. First thing is that's important. Because now, all of a sudden, nobody wants to have children no more.
Right.
And when you teach that mentality, you have deadbeat dads. Somebody missed that. Being single and doing what you want to do is a good thing now. It's okay not to have kids. But in Israelite culture, Scripture says, blessed is the man that what? Children. His quiver is filled with them. With children. It was a good thing to have children. Now, she mentioned males. Remember I talked about equity, right? Males was not intrinsically more important than women, but in ancient times, there was no FBI, there was no police department, there was no protection agencies. So if you're going to protect your tribe, you better have a lot of males, because neighboring tribes may try to come and raid what you have. This is why the male grew in prominence, and having sons grew in prominence, because their job was to be the frontline protectors of the women and children, and the elderly, and the sick, and everybody else. This is why it was a good thing to have multiple sons. It wasn't a bad thing to have daughters. Because if you look in the scriptures, when the Israelites was in the wilderness wandering, it was only women who had no brothers that changed the Most High's mind to make a provision in the law. Never seen that done before. It was daughters of a father who died, who wanted to keep the inheritance, and the people would say, yo, shut up, man, you're crying too much. They said, no, we should have that right. They finally got that word up to Moses. He went to the Most High. Most High said, you know what? Make a provision in my law. It's like, man, you already did the statute of commandments. They were game changers because they didn't allow people to hush up their voice. But they did it so in proper order. So the key thing is, yes, right now, today, they discourage you from having children. You can't live your best life if you have a lot of kids. Well, I have 4 kids. I'm living my best life. That's just me. With my kids. Having them to enjoy it. Anytime I'm down, they bring joy to me. I can't see a fathom not having children. When I was young, I said, I don't want no kids. I don't want no kids. They're going to slow me down. I can't. But now that I have children, I said, most that's one of the greatest things you could ever give to me. Because one thing I learned, in order for me to know my relationship with Yah, I look at my relationship with my children. I said, damn, I must be that with the Most High all the time. Can't get mad. I got to understand. Sometimes I got to correct. but it teaches me that, wow, this is the relationship I have with the Most High. It's that simple. All right, so let's move forward, right? Here's some references on the elephantine papyri, so you can have some knowledge on that. All right? Some information on the Al-Yahudim tablets. So these tablets were unearthed in a place called Al-Yahudim, which means city of Judah or little Judah, right? Because it was a community of Judites that resided in Babylon, had their own community, their own economic system, social system, political system. They took care of all of their dealings amongst each other while they were in captivity. If you go to the elephantine papyri, that was a mercenary group where Egypt never had standing soldiers. They had to be drafted from amongst the people that's available. And sometimes that draft is not voluntary. But what happened was when you do volunteer, you turn into a mercenary, they put you on the books, they give you land, and say, okay, as long as you're in this army, like in Israel today, you gotta serve in the military idea. As long as you serve in the army, you can keep this plot of land and everything else that comes along with it. As long as you serve. So they created their own community there, and they did everything. They had their own marriage contracts, they had their own ceremonies, they did everything while they were in captivity. Why? Because Jeremiah chapter 29, verses 1 to 7. They built their own houses, they planted their own vineyards, they kept the marriages amongst themselves, and they sought the peace of the city that they lived in and intervened on it on Yah's behalf, and in its peace, they had peace. They had so much peace that when Jeremiah came to tell them, you gotta come back, they didn't want to leave. They got too comfortable. But sometimes it's at a point that once Yah gives you something, the purpose of that is to show you, now that I've given this to you, when I take it to somewhere else, all that's left behind, you gotta trust that I can do it again. Sometimes our wells are not dug deep enough and filled to the brim for us to go back to it when things start to look dry. Sometimes your face is too much on the dryness because you haven't dug the well. But the Most High said to Isaac, when he had a famine in the land, he tried to go to Egypt. What did the Most High say to him? Don't go nowhere. Stay there and dig at the site that your father digged at. Return back and do what your father did. In African spirituality, it's called Sankofa. The bird is looking back on an egg that's on his back. It's turning back to the way or the ancient pattern or where the ancient landmark or standing stone is at. King Khan? Alright. So we've done with all of that pretext to say, okay, from here, how do we transition here? Let me rush this real quick, right? So being that KHM is an organization that embodies those ideologies that I just went over, how do we operate? And I want you guys to see this very transparently to understand how we operate. A lot of times, you join an organization, they're not openly transparent about everything that they do. We're different, we are. And if you're a member, you will get to see that as well. If you request it, if you take time, it's something that you want to learn, but we tell you to sugar this first on the outside, right? Now, how many of y'all working here in corporate America? Raise your hands. Or have worked in corporate America? All right. Do you understand what the policies, procedures, laws, and bylaws of the corporation in which you work for? Have you read the employee handbook to know all the policies that pertain to you? Things you can and can't do? Things you signed off on just to get the job and didn't realize certain things? Like in Georgia, at will. They fire you and say, oh, we don't need you no more. You go. But you did. You're like, nah, I'm contented. Why? You signed for it right here. Look. You show your signature. See your signature? All right, did you read this clause, this clause, this clause? No? Sorry. Read everything before you sign it. The most important thing that you have is your signature. Once you put your signature on something, you agree to that contract and everything contained therein. And this is why a lot of civil suits get lost, because it goes back to the contract, the original contract. What did you agree to? And did you knowingly understand all the terms and conditions? That's why afterwards they said, I have read and understood all the so-and-so contained in this contract. Because if that's not there, you win the case. But if that's there, they'll be like, yo, he understood it. It's right here. It's right here. So that's important. So before you join any organization, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, all right? So these are some of our membership requirements for people who want to get involved with the organization and commence change directly in the community, because you can do it. People talk about keeping the statute of commandments all the time. It sounds archaic. How do you contemporize that to fix problems today that they didn't have before? They didn't have credit cards back then. They didn't have cell phones back then. They had a form of gentrification, but it ain't the same way that it is today. Gentrification is one nation come in and move you up out of it. There's no slow by slow, they just move you up out of it. It's a little bit different, right? They didn't live in the same legal legal system that we live in today, so there were things that were different. However, that principle is called an axiom. An axiom is a universal truth that maintains its value over the scope and span of times. Does not change. Torah has a million of them in it that you can utilize to fix any problem that you have today, right? So with our membership, we have a $50 dues. We don't ask for tithes, offerings, or anything outside of that. And remember, this is not a church, a congregation, or it's not a camp, whatever you want to call it. It's not one of those. So if you have some place you go to worship, to fellowship it, that's great. But once that's done, now how do we fix this community? Sounds good to talk about statute of commandments, but don't know how to take it into a format that fixes an actual problem. Sometimes it just fixes your problem, but how can it fix those around you? Okay? So with $50, we're able to raise enough funding to take care of a lot of the operations within the organization and create services and programs that benefit the community. I'm going to show you two of them for example, right? You have a monthly digital membership certificate because your membership is based on monthly, unless you want to do the annual, but we do a monthly membership because we don't want to confine anybody to anything that they're not too comfortable with. We're very flexible and open in the way that we operate, all right? A t-shirt, polo shirt, lapel pin, and fringes, tassels. If we have them, we don't, we can create them for you at events so that people can see unity amongst the organization. Familiarity with the organization's vision, mission statement, and charter. The charter acts as you get to after you pass all the other stuff and you read what we're about before you commit. The fresh skills training, because as an organization, we move a little bit differently than a lot of other Israelite organizations. You have to take 6 courses in order for you to move past the next level. 6 courses is in 6 classes. They give you a class on customer service, so you know how to deal with the front-facing public. One on goal setting and getting things done, so if you get a task, you know how to finish it. Conflict resolution, so if you get into a conflict with somebody, you know how to resolve it. Soft skills, and a bunch of other trainings that we give you access to. And once that's done, then we give you access to 99 other skills that you can take, you get certificates, and they can be added to your resume. We cover all of that based on the membership dues that we have. We provide you with skills before you come into the organization, and once you're here, we continue to train you. So if you leave, you leave out with more than what you came in with. That's the goal, right? Access to our One Church software, which is software that allows you to interact with all the activities and people involved in the organization. Attendance of at least one monthly fellowship event. I'll show you what those look like. Physically, you have to come together once a month to talk about a think tank about the problems in the community and how we can take our culture and fix them. You can talk about anything else, but the main thing on the table is, crime has skyrocketed in my area over here. Homelessness has skyrocketed over here. Okay, how can we take what we're learning and fix it? Because through those works, we bring people to the faith. Too many times Christianity gives you the faith first, and then maybe you might go to do something else. That time is over. You have to put the work out first. The work will draw the people in, and from there, then we can educate them on who they are and why we're compelled to do this for them. All right? We want you to give ideas. Anything you see that's problematic in the community that you know that we can fix. We're not going to sit here and wait for a handout. We're not going to sit here and wait for a hand up. We're not going to sit here and wait for this organization, that organization come and do it for us. We are Israel, we can do it ourselves. If you don't think you can do it yourselves, then I will speak to you on a one-on-one and show you the things that are in you. You have not pulled out yet that you can use to fix any problem based on what y'all breathed into you already. You will all dry bones at one time. You're not dry bones no more. Join a chapter, which is this one is a physical chapter in groups. We have tons of groups in our organization. If you like gardening, we have a group for that. We have a security group. You want to do security, we have security. We have a finance group. We want to do finance. We want to business acumen. We have business analysts in our group. We have all types of groups that keep you active and involved with the people of Yah as we're taking solutions to fix problems in the communities in which we live in. All right? Assist with the organizational services and programs because we have services and programs. Programs are free and they have a paid element if you want to graduate to that. But services are subscription-based and we provide them to fix problems. Here's a good example. We have something called the Handmaids of Zion. The Handmaids of Zion is a program where parents pay a fee, and then every month we send aides to their house to cook, clean, do domestic duties, watch the children while they have a breather to go study, go on vacation, or do something else with their life. A lot of reasons why single parents can't do much because they got kids. Some of them may have family members, some of them have family members that don't want to deal with their kids. But when that's an issue that's preventing this woman from actually attaining to what she needs to be as her place in Israel, then how come we're not giving her relief? If It should not be a burdensome to have children when you have a village that supports you. But when your village is only as small as your family, you don't have a village. You have a small clan, if that. Is that making sense? Practical stuff that we do with the little bit that we receive and the amount of stuff we try to do behind it. Right? This is what one of these certificates look like digitally. We'll pass that. This is what the shirt looks like. We'll pass that in the pen. This is an example of one of our chapter get-togethers, right? Our brother Shay Kyle, who's in New Orleans, we devised this back in 2019 as one of the fellowship events that we did for our chapter that's out there in New Orleans. So what we did was, and what we typically do for our get-together, we find a theme. It could be anything, like it could be Squid Games now, since that's the thing that's popular, whatever. Whatever's gonna draw people in, right? They think they're coming in for one thing, and we bait switch them. And then now they sit in a situation, we're talking about fixing problems in the community using Torah. Like, how the hell did I end up here? And I'm trying to come in for Squid Games. Oh, this is a Squid Game, you're gonna watch Squid Games. Like y'all just turn the camera up and what? That's how you do it. You bait and switch them, right? They do that to all time for nefarious practices, but now we're doing it for righteous reasons. So what he did was, at that time, there was a football game going on in New Orleans. They loved the Saints. New York, I don't know. It's all types of people in New York, some people like the Jets, Giants, whoever. They love the Saints down there. You better not say nothing about the Saints. Because whether you're black or white, they all agree I love the Saints. So we knew that the game was coming up, so we created a whole event around that team. For a whole bunch of people in there that didn't know what they were doing there, they just know they like football. And they walked out, oh shit, I'm an Israelite. Oh wow, we can fix this problem? Oh man, Torah, I never heard that before in my life. I thought it was all run away with. Now they're walking out different than what they came in. And now we gave them the tools, the education, the know-how, how to take that knowledge and then fix problems in their community. Because if the thing that you're getting involved in cannot fix your problems, why are you still there? Why are you wasting your time? What did you pick up the book for? You don't know how to apply it. Wasting your time. Find something else to do. And that's the reason why a lot of people leave our community. There's no resources. Alright, then we have chapter roles, and you put them all out here. So when we set up a chapter, we have everybody that has these roles. There's other small roles too, like security and stuff like that. But all of this is necessary to run the chapter in a particular city. Right? How do we generate earned revenue? What's earned revenue? Anybody know the difference between earned revenue and contribution as it pertains to a nonprofit? Anybody? Anybody familiar with nonprofits? Involved in one? Yes. So what's the difference between earned revenue and contribution? No, not fun. Always is part of contributions, right? So earned revenue. There you go. Comes from the service. For example, how many know about Goodwill? Raise your hand, right? A lot of people think about Goodwill. You just go and drop stuff off. You don't want no more. You get a receipt and you use that when you file taxes. If you can. Now you gotta have a certain amount before you file taxes. I learned that the hard way. But anyway, so they have other services there. You know that, right? Yeah. They actually have services that help you find a job, help you find housing. You know that? So next time you go there and you know somebody ain't got a job, you need to send them to Goodwill. But now, if we take matters in our own hands, they should be coming to you. How do I get employed? Hey, look, my job wanted me to do A, B, and C. I could not do it. It was against my religious beliefs. Now I'm coming to you. How can you help me? What you gonna say? Well, here's that. That's what we do. But now we can do something different. So with earned revenue, we create services, products, and goods as a means of bringing in money to support the operation of the organization. Right? So some of those is in merchandise, and some of those I did here loosely. I didn't bring everything, but loosely, right? Mixtapes, how many of you have heard one of my mixtapes? We got 3 of them out already. Raise your hand. Okay, if not, we can check some of them out over here. T-shirts, raise your hand. Anybody T-shirts? Okay. Calendars, raise your hand. Calendars, okay. Services that we have as well, Jubilee Mission Program, which is debt elimination and credit repair, and we teach you fiscal responsibility, right? Naturopathic eating program, naturopathic health consultation. Every program and service we create fixes a societal ill in our community and has a basis in the scripture. That's why it says Jubilee, that's why it says eating. There's 7 more of these. We have a Shifra and Pua's birthing school. Who are they? Anybody know? Who's Shifra and Pua is? And what did they do?
The midwives.
And what did they do? Why did they stand out?
Save the male children.
Save the male children. If you wanted to have a home birth, do you know somebody you can go to help you with that? All 3 of my children were born at home. All 3 of my children never got vaccinated.
Wow.
They never, and my oldest daughter's 4. She'll be 5 in February, never been vaccinated.
Wow.
That's crazy. And she's healthy. Why? Because we have on a health regimen to make sure she doesn't die. She gets exposed to pathogens. She gets sick, and that's okay. She gets a fever, that's okay, but it's not often. And when she does, she runs a course. We give her other stuff to support. My wife loves elderberry. See right there, she loves elderberry. I can't stand the smell of it, but it's healthy for you. I try to get the natural stuff from the store. She makes it raw in the house.
Oh, wow.
So I gotta give her credit for that, but it works. It's a way to stabilize them so the body can do its job. When you take the body away from doing its job, you get more sick because the body doesn't know how to take care of itself. It loses that knowledge over time. Several studies have been done on this. When you intervene too much, the body loses its capability to do that. Why do you think people die when they take them off respirators? Your lungs have a memory. Bronchial tubes, alveoli sacs, all of this has muscle memory, quote unquote. If you have something breathing for you for an extended period of time and you remove it, not gradually but suddenly, the lungs collapse on itself and the body dies from asphyxiation because it forgets how to work. Same thing when you get older, you get muscular dystrophy after the age of 35, your muscles break down naturally. That's just what happens. So you gotta sustain the muscle mass that you have as you're getting older. That means the amount of minerals, supplements, fats, or saturated fats, you have unsaturated, saturated fats, the amounts that come in has to change than when you were younger because of the changes that occur as you get older. So if you teach your children health at a young age, so my children know what to eat, what not to eat, sometimes they get rid of stuff, sometimes it's my fault, I'm not saying perfect. But for the most part, my children have been unvaccinated, one in the hospital. People told me that's crazy. How are you gonna have a child outside the hospital? I have 3 of them now. They all healthy, no problems. None of them been vaccinated, but if you're around kids who are sick, get sick all the time, and have been vaccinated. And I'm not saying vaccination is bad. I'm just saying the fact that my child is in an environment where they should be catching all types of infectious diseases, she's not. And if she does, she survives. Right? That's a form of autonomy. So when we talk about programs and services, if somebody wants to do that, can we offer that service to them in our community? Do we have a security deployment force, which we're working on, meaning that, for example, you don't know about Islam, raise your hand. Nation of Islam, Islam owns like the security element of Nation of Islam. If a Muslim, black Muslim, anyone having a problem in the city, they send FOI there. What if you have a problem? Who are you going to ask for? The police? Who don't live in your community? It's going to see everything as adversarial, and it's going to criticize everything you say because of where you live, judging you based on your circumstance and not on your character. That's why you want to come to your aid every time something happens. Sometimes that's a good thing, I ain't gonna lie. But sometimes that's a bad thing, because that goes to show that we can't even police ourselves. Who do you have to protect you? Y'all quiet now. So that's what I'm saying. So that's why we created our force. We didn't put it out yet, but it's a subscription service that you pay every month. And if you ever get into issues, you make a phone call, you send a whole squad there to secure you. Lock everything down. Everything. If you have a child being bullied at school, they go to your school with your child. The other children see your one child with 4 or 5 people with them, guarding them, reading them, like this, looking around. Excuse me, move back some, escorting them to school. So that bully says, you're about to pop off you at the school. He said, all right, cool, let's do that. 3 o'clock, I can't wait for it to happen. He walked out there, 4 or 5 bodyguards. What the bully gonna do? I gotta go home this time, I'll fight you another time, but it's the presence to know that other people are there. Just like when you go on the playground, 2 little kids get in a fight, one kid know I got a big brother, I want to talk the loudest. If you fight me, my brother's gonna jump in and he's gonna put in that work. We don't have that type of oversight in our community. That's why they can shoot you and get away with it. What you gonna do? You ain't gonna do nothing. You ain't got no lobbyists. You ain't got no advocates. You ain't got nobody policing your community. What you gonna do? We shoot you. Okay. Right? And this one right here, we're talking about recently about the religious exemption letter. It's another service that we offer. But we look at all the earned revenue for a small organization that we are. This year alone, starting in January, we pulled in $36,000. I'm talking about small organizations. $36,000 from all the stuff that we offer. So people may not think t-shirts are the big thing. People buy a lot of t-shirts. Big stakes, like music. Calendar, they need something to look at. So we covered all bases, the services, health, debt elimination, especially this letter right here, we made, I think, $2,200 in donations, but helping people try and keep their jobs. This is not a guarantee, but we're trying to see an issue that people are experiencing that has to us help. We said, okay, I'm not gonna go here, let's find a solution amongst ourselves, let's try to do something about it, right? All right, so let's skip through the rest, because I'm gonna give the pass on. This is some of the merchandise that we have. Which is over here, some of the services that we have, right? And I'm going to talk about some of this in the second part. We're going to break right now. These are the contributions we receive, membership dues, YouTube revenue. So when y'all do super chat, it goes back to the organization. When you do monetization, it goes back to the organization. None of that goes in my pocket. If you want to know what goes in my pocket, it's the KHM. Some of that does go in my pocket, and sometimes I buy resources that I then give out to the community. I still work. But the Patreon, that goes to me because in a non-for-profit, the person who's the founder cannot gain revenue from the organization. So if you have an organization and the leader of the organization is making money for the 501c3 non-profit, it's wrong. I mean, y'all don't know the laws and bylaws that the federal government establishes on what a non-for-profit is. So I don't get none of this. I just create opportunities for others to have. Right? PayPal, Cash App, donations, cash donations, etc. To hear some goals, we run through real fast. We construct and restore culture back to our community to receive the blessings of Devarim or Deuteronomy 28:1-15. A lot of y'all just talk about the curses. Skip over the blessings, go right to the curses. I'm like, damn, what if you keep it Torah? You still on the curses? Something's wrong with that. If you're keeping Torah, you talking about still cursed? Why? I'm keeping Torah. It's a blessing that comes with that. What does that blessing look like when you're behind enemy lines? The same thing our ancestors were doing in the Al-Yahudu city and Elephantine. They had communities that were thriving behind enemy lines while in captivity. They weren't trying to overthrow the government. That's not their job. That's the Most High's job. Our job is to create breathing room so we can survive the judgment, so we are here alive when He takes us back. Khan? All right. Raise capital. Why? To provide stipends for volunteers, which we pay out. People who volunteer for the organization, they can request a stipend, and we pay those stipends, which will help people during the unemployment phase of last year because of coronavirus, right? Or employ. We have 4 employees, part-time employees of the organization, because of the donations that come in and the services that we offer. We employ people. We want to employ more people. Next year, we want to have at least 120 jobs by the end of next year. Right? Because then we're going to graduate to get in our grants and our contracts, working on getting contracts from governmental and non-governmental entities so we can supply the social services for disenfranchised people in urban areas. So disenfranchised people, if you want to go get services, you got to go to the local government. We talk to the local government and say, no, we want that contract because we're going in as Israelites, seeing our people differently than what they see, and we're going to change the entire morale because once the morale is changed, people tend to sustain themselves. So after we in here, we leave, they're like, damn. These people came in and they did this, and now this whole time community is flourishing. How is that possible? Because God's hand is on us. His reputation is on our sleeve. We got His name. So what are you doing to make His name great? You just telling people they curse, that's not making His name great. How does that work? All right, these are sufficient-rate services and free programs that we mentioned earlier. Establish more community improvement projects. Make investments to provide security for future events. And become an angel investment entity. What is that? Anybody know what that is? Angel investment? Yeah, what is that?
Early investor in stock organization.
So, if I'm Jay-Z, and what's your name again, brother? John comes to Jay-Z and says, yo, Jay-Z, man, I love you, you're my idol, but yo, I got this idea, can you help me? How many people they come to him with that? A million people probably come to him with that, right? But you come to him and you show him not only your game plan, but how it's actually working now and its potential. Just like Shark Tank. You ever seen Shark Tank? So they are angel investors, and some of them are capital ventures, right? This depends. But what they do is, Jay-Z said, man, I like that idea, so I'm going to give you $500,000 up front, want 20% stake in your business. Meaning he's gonna make all his money back. He don't lose nothing. When they give you $500,000, you think they're losing money, they get it back from you. And if you fail, they sell your business off to somebody else and they make it profitable and they get all their money back. Everything is insured. They don't lose anything. Right? But we don't have that in the Israelite community. What if it comes with a good idea, an invention? Who's gonna support that? You can't go back to your community and say, yo, God, I just idea, oh, damn. Here this come again. We hear this all the time. When it's done, you come back and let us know. Nobody's putting their hands in the pot to help you build that business, or whatever it may be. In the Jewish community, anytime a person has a business, everybody's obligated to support that business. Everybody. And once they are successful, now they go into the same pot and they also contribute and make sure the next individual's business is successful. Are they doing that in our community? I haven't seen that in the black community yet. I got a business, my people don't even patronize me. I gotta make ads saying, okay, let's patronize black businesses to get patronized. People to realize, oh shit, there's black business in my community. Yeah, but you look past us for something else. But in other communities from that age up, they're already trained to do that. At this age, right here, see it? While he's growing, they train them to do that at that age. We learn some of this as adults. And that means you gotta take 25, 30, 40, 50 years and reverse that into a wide mode of thinking that we should have had when we were younger. Deuteronomy chapter 6 says to raise your children up with Torah as they go, as they come, as they lie down, as they wake up. When you teach them these things, it becomes instinctive and they do it automatically. This is what these other communities teach. They keep their culture. We lost ours. Culture maintains the integrity of the community and ensures its survival and it thrives. Survival is not enough. You must thrive. Survival means you're liable to do anything so you can get ahead. Black people have been in that for a long period of time. That's why we do a lot of stuff, the backstab, cheat, all types of stuff. But if you're taught how to thrive, that means that you have a contingency plan if something goes awry, and the objective is to make it successful again, not just to stay at this point and survive day by day. You cannot live like that. That's unsustainable. That's unsustainable. See, that's the community helping out. Give your hands around yourselves a round of applause. Clap for yourselves. Small example. Somebody else saw this happening. They alerted the parents and me. We stopped it from happening. This is how we gotta help our people. You see a household struggle and need, go to the aid. Don't just wait and say, it's not on my door yet, so I ain't gonna say nothing. Imagine we all did that with each other when we had a problem. Oh, he lost his job, everybody at the house. Yo, what can we do for you? Somebody moving out, everybody here, how can we move out for you? You'd have a whole different community if we did that, right? Establish peace in our cities so that we may have peace. And you don't have peace in New York because you're not getting involved. You're not following scripture. Most already gave you the blueprint. You're just not following. Create a safe haven hub. What's that? We're working on refuge cities. You know what refuge cities are? Are there safe houses for us if something happens? Do you have a safe house you can go to if something happens to you? Or do you have to go back to the state, to the local government, to another non-for-profit? Where's our safe house if something happens to us? When we protect somebody who speaks out against the government and protect them in a safe house that they can go to in an underground network, where's that? Israel, they have refuge cities. You kill somebody by accident, family want to bang on you, you got a place you can go to. Right? The elders and the priests intervene on your behalf. They have a trial. If it's in your favor, you stay in the refuge city until that high priest dies, then you can leave out. That person is not allowed to touch you while you're in the refuge city. This is an antiquity. How does it work today? We have laws that we can take advantage of. I know a lot of people don't want to vote, which I think is the most asinine thing, but I understand your idea. You complain about something to change. When it doesn't change, you are frustrated by it, but you don't want to take your power to change it. And let's say that somebody's a convicted felon, because sometimes they lose their right to vote. Convicted felons, I know 6 of them that want to get involved by voting, they can't vote. So what we did was, we had a program out in Atlanta. The objective of it, with the Solicitor General's office for misdemeanors, but some people will come with felonies as well, restrict or remove. A whole bunch of black people from the hood come to this program, and we get rid of misdemeanors that kept them from getting jobs, kept them from getting houses, establish a line of credit, remove it and or restrict it. Please go look them up. Don't see no misdemeanors. Here's your card. Have a nice day. Keep going. We set up a whole program to do that. Now, at the same time, we had unions over here, electricians, blacksmiths, plumbers. Once they got their resume, criminal resume restricted or removed, they go get a job. On the opposite side, we have housing entities over here. They go get a house. And on top of that over here, then they go get investments because now they can establish a line of credit. They got all three things after getting their stuff restricted. Are we doing that for our community? Because if we do, we have more opportunities, more access to wealth, remove redlining, create an opportunity for our children's children to pass down an inheritance. Are we able to do that now? If not, then we're failing. I'm calling our grandchildren, not just our children. All right? Here's some benefits. I'm just going to run through it. You guys can see this look at it another time because I know we're really over time. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to break right now. Let's go eat the food that's there so you can be recharged. The next session is about 30 minutes. It's really short. I'm going to touch on health. I'm going to touch on credit repair. And then I'm going to touch on religious exemption. All right? So y'all can leave at this point after you eat if you want. For those who want to stay, for those, you can stay afterwards. All right? So go ahead, eat, refresh yourselves, drink. Everything's here waiting for you. Thank you for making it.